Hello, I'm doing my book talk on Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. This is actually a book that I had just finished reading with my college composition course, which is comprised of 10th through 12th graders. And it is a book that we looked at in order to look at an example of science fiction and essentially an anti-war novel, because Kurt Vonnegut does both in this piece of literature. Kurt Vonnegut writes this anti-war war novel in order to bring about the harsh realities of war and massacre. He uses an unconventional style of writing, which mimics the main character's thoughts of being unstuck in time. This means the main character can travel freely to whatever time and setting he pleases in order to further exploit the realities of war. Billy Pilgrim is based very loosely on Kurt Vonnegut himself and his very likable character who is trying hard to re-enter society now that he is back from the war. Billy travels between events in his personal life, events that happened during the war, and events that happened as he is abducted by aliens to the planet Tralfamadore. All the settings work together to create one big picture of the struggles of one man to make sense of something that shouldn't. This first excerpt I'm going to read is very short and details Vonnegut's purpose in writing the entire novel. It is so short and jumbled and jangled, Sam, because there's nothing intelligent to say about a massacre. Everybody is supposed to be dead, to never say anything or want anything ever again. Everything is supposed to be very quiet after a massacre, and it always is, except for the birds. And what do the birds say? All there is to say about a massacre. Things like poo tee wit. And this example is an example of a motif as well, and it occurs later in the book, actually at the very end of the novel, so that the students can see that he's sort of come full circle with the information that he's presented in this novel. Then my other excerpt comes when Billy Pilgrim is discussing some information with the Tralfamadores and how they structure their everyday life. And it goes along with another motive that is seen in the novel, So It Goes. That's Billy Pilgrim's attitude towards most of everything that he encounters, but most specifically death. "Where am I?" said Billy Pilgrim. "Trapped in another blob of amber, Mr. Pilgrim. We are where we have to be just now, 300 million miles from Earth, bound for a time warp which will get us to Tralfamadore in hours rather than centuries." How did I get here? It would take another Earthling to explain it to you. Earthlings are great explainers, explaining why this event is structured as it is, telling how other events may be achieved or avoided. I am a Tralfamadorian, seeing all time as you might see a stretch of the Rocky Mountains. All time is all time. It does not change. It does not lend itself to warnings or explanations. It simply is. Take it moment by moment, and you will find that we are all, as I've said before, bugs in amber. "You sound to me as though you don't believe in free will," said Billy Pilgrim. "If I hadn't spent so much time studying Earthlings," said the Tralfamadore, "I wouldn't have any idea what was meant by free will. I visited 31 inhabited planets in the universe, and I have studied reports on 100 more. Only on Earth is there any talk of free will." And that's a great example of one of the themes that we looked at, was free will, and if there is actually any sort of free will in any society. So the purpose of this novel really provides students with an example of science fiction in an anti-war novel by incorporating 3 different settings in order to arrive at the full picture of what Kurt Vonnegut was trying to achieve, that there's nothing that really makes sense with death and war and massacre. He structures his novel in such a way that the main character, Billy Pilgrim, travels between 3 different settings. So by the end of the novel, you get a full, complete picture of what happened to him in the war, what happened to him in his personal life, and what happened to him on Tralfamadore, which the students see as in a way that he can escape the harsh realities of what he's dealing with in his life. And it's sort of his way of postponing some of the tough questions and tough answers that he doesn't want to face. So by the end of the novel, you see complete pictures of all 3 of these. However, during the novel, Kurt Vonnegut structures it in such a way that because Billy Pilgrim is unstuck in time, the events that occur in the novel are unstuck in time. And it's sort of like a stream of consciousness writing where he jumps from one setting to the other. So he may be somewhere and there's music that reminds him of something that happened in the war, or the faces of the barbershop quartet at his anniversary dinner remind him of something with the war, and it makes him jump back in time to that specific setting. So Kurt Vonnegut didn't want to write his novel in chronological order because he said that would make sense. And in the reader's mind, it would make sense that one thing happened another, and therefore war would make sense. And since Vonnegut's whole purpose is that there is nothing that makes sense about death and massacre and war and destruction, he structures his novel in such a way to mimic that entire idea so that the students can really look at it in terms of Vonnegut speaking to us through his structure and his word choice. So it's very ingenious, and once the kids sort of catch on to this different and unconventional plot structure, they really seem to like it and really start to pay attention to the different areas and different times that Vonnegut chooses to make Billy Pilgrim jump back in time. So by the end, you get a full picture of what happened to him and how he dealt with things and how he was able to deal with things, and therefore relate that a little bit to Vonnegut, since Billy Pilgrim is based so loosely off of Kurt Vonnegut. So it gives you a full picture of what the author went through trying to deal with the realities of war and how to re-enter society and become an active citizen after fighting in the war. Students are able to engage with the book and make connections to Billy Pilgrim because the language is very simple and easy to understand, and it really helps some students follow the plot structure a little bit better with this unconventional type of writing, that it works a little bit like their minds work and jumps back and forth to different things that they are reminded of. It allows students to analyze the text, the themes, and the structures to accurately arrive at the author's purpose for writing this novel. And in the end, they can see the overall purpose and that the author has come full circle through the actions and the theme that Kurt Vonnegut offers up in this novel.